Have you ever had the feeling that money just disappears, even when you swear you didn't spend on anything major? Have you ever opened your banking app and tried to remember where that amount went that seemed enough just a few days ago? And the worst part is, you feel like you work. You put in the effort, you try to do the right thing, but still never seem to move forward. So let me ask you a question that maybe no one has ever asked you this clearly. What if the problem isn't in the big decisions, but in the small choices you repeat every single day without noticing? Because that's what almost no one understands. It's not one big purchase that destroys your financial life. It's not a huge mistake. It's not an absurd decision. It's small, seemingly harmless decisions that silently accumulate until the point where you look at your life and feel like you've lost control. And here's something that might sound strange at first, but makes total sense once you start paying attention. The more you try to ignore these small decisions, the more they grow, and the harder it becomes to break out of this cycle. You don't feel the impact in a day or even in a week, sometimes not even in a month, but it's there, building up, creating an invisible effect until one day it turns into anxiety, pressure, fear, that feeling that any unexpected event could turn into a disaster. And if you ignore this, you'll keep making the exact same choices without realizing that you are, little by little, sabotaging your own peace of mind. Because the problem was never a lack of intelligence or willpower. The problem is that no one ever showed you where the real mistake is, and it's much closer than you think. Now, think about how a typical day in your life starts. You wake up, maybe already with a slight worry, grab your phone, check messages, social media, and without realizing it, you're already being pulled by stimuli. Then comes breakfast, sometimes something bought for convenience. Then transportation, small expenses that seem normal, inevitable. And throughout the day, small decisions keep happening. A snack, a coffee, an order for convenience, an impulse purchase that seemed too cheap to pass up. And in the moment, everything feels justified. You think it's just this, that you deserve it, that it won't make a difference. And that's exactly where the problem lies. Because each of these decisions on their own really doesn't seem relevant. But together they build a pattern, and that pattern is what's shaping your financial life every single day. Your brain wasn't designed to handle repeated small decisions well. It ignores them, automates them, saves energy. And that creates a dangerous trap, because you stop paying attention to exactly what impacts your life the most. You think you're in control, but you're on autopilot. And autopilot, when not adjusted, always takes you to the easiest path, not the best one. And the easiest path almost always involves spending without thinking. Now imagine this happening over weeks and months. It's not one big expense that sinks you. It's the silent accumulation of small decisions that were never questioned. And over Chimi, this starts to generate something that goes beyond money. It creates mental exhaustion because deep down, something isn't right. You feel tension when paying bills, insecurity when thinking about the future, discomfort when avoiding looking at your balance. And the heaviest part, the feeling that you're doing everything right and still not moving forward, that wears you down, drains you, discourages you, and then another, even more dangerous cycle begins. You start seeking small rewards to relieve that feeling. A purchase to feel better, another because the day was hard. And without realizing it, you enter a cycle where money becomes an attempt to relieve the very stress it is causing, like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. And this doesn't happen because you're irresponsible. It happens because no one taught you to see it. No one showed you that the problem isn't the amount, it's the repetition, and especially the lack of awareness about these decisions. Because when you don't see it, you don't change. And when you don't change, the result stays the same. Now, there is something simple, but extremely powerful. It's not big changes that transform your financial life. It's small interruptions in the automatic. It's the moment when you stop and think before acting. When you start noticing patterns that used to go unnoticed. And at first, this is uncomfortable because you begin to see things you'd rather not see. You start noticing how much money is slipping away unnecessarily. You begin questioning habits that seemed normal. And that creates discomfort. But that discomfort is the beginning of change. Because for the first time, you stop being carried along and start choosing. And choosing, even though it's hard at first, is what gives you control back. There's a very common mistake here. People notice the problem and try to change everything at once. They cut everything, deprive themselves of everything, try to become a different person overnight, and that almost never works because it's not sustainable. The brain rejects radical changes Resistance kicks in, frustration follows, and then abandonment. And everything goes back to how it was before, or worse. That's why this isn't the path. The path is to start small, but consistently choose a single decision in your day and pay attention to it. Just one. It could be coffee, a snack, any automatic expense. And instead of acting on impulse, you observe, think, and decide consciously. And that alone already starts changing something inside you because it breaks the autopilot. And when you break the autopilot, you start regaining control. That control doesn't show up in your balance on the first day, but it shows up in your mind, in clarity, in a sense of direction, and that changes everything. Because money, before being numbers, is behavior. And behavior is built on small decisions, not big ones. So how many of these decisions have you been making without realizing it? How many times did you say it was just today and it became a routine? How many times did you avoid looking, thinking, facing it? And if you keep going like this, where will it take you in a year? Because the problem with small decisions is that they don't seem dangerous at first, but time turns small choices into big consequences. Now, there's a point that completely changes the game. When you start noticing your small decisions, the urge to make up for lost time appears to change everything at once. But that rush is what makes most people give up, because it creates an impossible expectation. And when it's not met, frustration comes, along with the thought that trying is useless. And everything goes back to the beginning, only now with more guilt. And this cycle repeats until you start thinking the problem is you, when in reality it's the way you're trying to solve it. Because if the problem was built through small decisions over time, the solution also needs to follow that logic. Instead of trying to change everything, you start adjusting one specific behavior intelligently, reducing the friction of the right decision and increasing the friction of the wrong one. You stop fighting yourself and start organizing the environment around you, creating small barriers for automatic spending and making it easier for what you want to happen, like automatically setting aside a portion of your money as soon as it comes in, before you even have the chance to spend it. It doesn't need to be a lot. It needs to be automatic, because automatic doesn't depend on your mood or your fatigue. And there's a specific moment that defines everything, that instant between impulse and decision, that almost invisible second where you feel like doing something but haven't done it yet. That's where change happens. Because after the decision is made, the pattern has already been repeated, and the brain registers it as a habit, reinforcing the cycle. So when you start noticing that space, even if you don't change every decision, you stop being completely automatic and start being partially conscious. And that difference, as small as it may seem, is massive over time. And there's something even deeper. Many of these decisions aren't about necessity. They're about identity, about how you see yourself, about what you believe you deserve, about how you try to feel better in difficult moments. And that influences more than any method. Because if deep down you believe money never lasts or that there's no point in trying, your decisions will follow that logic even without you realizing it. And that's why many people end up in the same place even after trying to get organized. But when you start noticing this without judging yourself, you create a real opportunity for change, because you begin questioning these silent beliefs. You start understanding that maybe the problem isn't inability, but the lack of a system that works in your reality. And that changes the way you see yourself. It removes guilt and places responsibility on what can be adjusted. And when something can be adjusted, a more real, more solid hope appears. And from that point on, the focus completely shifts. It stops being about earning more quickly and becomes about stopping the loss you don't even notice, because before growing, you need to stop leaking. And those leaks are invisible to those who don't pay attention, but become clear to those who start observing. And when you close these small leaks, you start seeing money left over. Not because you earned more, but because you stopped letting it slip away. And that brings a real sense of progress. Now, the practical path begins when you stop trying to control everything and start organizing the minimum necessary to not lose control. Without complex spreadsheets, without rigid rules, but with a simple system that works even on difficult days. And that system starts by giving your money a destination as soon as it comes in. Because money without a destination becomes a decision, and decisions fail. So you anticipate, even if it's a small amount. What matters is giving it direction. Then you reduce the number of decisions throughout the day, because the more you decide, the more you get wrong, the more tired you get. So you simplify, avoid situations that require constant choices, create small barriers against impulse, and finally, you review without judgment, not to punish yourself, but to understand. Because when you observe without guilt, you learn, adjust, and evolve. And when these three movements start happening together, you leave reaction mode and enter direction mode. You stop putting out fires and start building. You begin preventing problems before they grow. You start feeling like you're ahead of your own life. And that feeling is what many people are searching for without knowing it. It's not just money, it's peace. Lightness.com. And this doesn't come from big changes. It comes from the sum of small conscious decisions that replace automatic ones. And over Chimi, what was difficult becomes natural. What required effort becomes a pattern, and you realize your reality has already changed. So now the final question is simple. How many small decisions are you still ignoring every single day? Because that's where the difference lies between staying in the same place or truly changing. And if you notice something here that you had never realized before, then you've already started. Now, the next step isn't here. It's in what you're going to do when this video ends. Because if you stay on autopilot, nothing changes. But if you start paying attention, even if it's just one decision per day, your life has already begun to change. If you've made it this far, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, because here we talk about money in a simple, direct, and real way, no fluff. And comments the word awareness, because that's the turning point that separates those who stay stuck from those who start moving forward.